You have a beautiful girlfriend who spends practically 24 hours with you, but one day she goes all devilish because she thought you were cheating on her and sends you to the devil. But, since you are the chosen one of God, your father marries a new woman who, by the grace of the Lord, has your ex-girlfriend as her daughter. So now they're step-siblings? HOI, if you want to know the name of this anime, it will appear during the video down below, so leave a comment with the exact minute when it shows up, and I'll know if you're worthy of the pair of attributes that Isana carries. Chapter 1. The anime begins with a quarrel between siblings who apparently don't get along very well, although they always act as pleasantly as possible in front of their parents. But when their parents leave, they give each other murderous looks quickly. So, while washing the dishes after dinner, Yum tells our protagonist that they must keep what happened a secret, which the protagonist confirms he will take to the grave. The detail is that, since she can't stand him, she tells him that now that they are step-siblings, he should call her the older sister. Here, you wonder what the secret is. Turns out that the protagonist has already used the mysterious mouse tool with her many times, as a few months ago, they were both dating, but by a twist of fate, they both broke up, and now they are step-siblings. As if those things happened. So Yum now wants the guy to call her the older sister because, according to her, she was born 30 minutes earlier. There, they decide to come to an agreement that, since they are now siblings, they should act as such in front of their parents, but at any moment, one of them will slip up and do something that is not sibling-like. Since they were previously a couple, that spark to move forward could appear. The person who loses will become the younger sibling. They both accept the deal, and Yum quickly starts snooping around the books that our dear Mizuto has. Since the guy knows he can't be bothered by the things she does, he starts thinking about what the solution might be for her to leave his room without opening Pandora's box, a box in which many luxurious things are hidden. Quickly, the protagonist gets sentimental and starts apologizing for everything he's done, making himself look like a handsome guy that makes the waifu blush and lose quickly. As the protagonist is the winner, he has the right to ask for something, or he makes the guy say this. Put a short clip saying Anakin and some cool meme. Mizuto, after having a silly moment listening to that word, makes the guy tell her that it was all a joke for her to lose, so she gets angry and goes back to her room. Their idea was that, when leaving the house, they wouldn't know each other, but their parents enroll them in the same academy where they both share the same last name. Yum quickly starts making friends, while Mizuto is forever alone in his desk, where some guys approach just to check out her sister. Seeing that her brother would have a Wednesday life at school, Yum decides to help him in a very sultry way. So, the next day, they both go to school together, and she takes his arm and leans her melons in front of several guys, saying that she only has a lot of affection for her little brother. Damn, what a move. Being at home, the protagonist thanks her for her support, and they spend some time alone, supposedly since their parents won't be home that night. There, Yum plans to make the protagonist nervous so he loses and does what she asks. So, while taking a shower, she decides to come out half naked to the living room so that he can see the attributes she now has, now that she's grown up. As expected, the guy tries to hold back, so he tells her to cover up because he knows she only wanted to tease him. However, out of nowhere and by the grace of the Lord, Yum stumbles, and they both end up in a very desired situation for everyone. Mizuto, seeing his waifu all sexy, decides to lose for today, and just as they are about to kiss, their parents arrive. So close but so far, but fortunately, Yum manages to hide quickly, and everything remains a secret again. They are going to end up. Censor sound. Chapter 2. The next morning, during a break from the usual classes, the ladies' man, the most incredible hunk in the class, appears to ask our friend to be friends. He's Kogure, a rather strange guy who claims not to have any intentions of dating the protagonist's sister. However, Mizuto, with his guard up, mentions that he won't allow any womanizer to get close to Yum. A situation that leaves our dear friend quite blushed. At that moment, the physical tests begin. There, we meet Minami, a very cheerful and energetic girl who is quite curious about Yum's attributes since they are the same age, but one has more assets than the other. So, after Yum told her that she also went through the flat stage and then evolved, Minami has more confidence in herself and wants to be friends with the busty girl. The physical activities begin, and Minami is in great shape, scoring the best grades. We see that Yum, despite being good at many things. Yes, she's very good, Well, she's terrible at sports, always getting low grades or at least the minimum to pass. So, since she wants to set a good example, she puts in a lot of effort to achieve a high score. This causes her to collapse during the endurance test, where Mizuto rescues her and sends her to the infirmary with Minami. Once Minami recovers, she mentions that Mizuto was concerned about her the whole time, something that leaves her a bit embarrassed. That energy drain and effort make Yum sick, and Minami asks the protagonist to go to her house to check on her. So, after buying various things, they arrive at Yum's house and enter her room, where she is delirious, calls the protagonist by his name, and says she missed him because he left her all alone. Realizing that Minami was there, she blushes, so while they prepare food for her, Minami begins to suspect that the protagonist had a girlfriend, so it is very likely that this crazy girl will discover the secret. After the crazy girl leaves, Yum becomes very affectionate with the protagonist, asking for his hand to sleep well, a hand that ends in tremendous soft cushions. As time passes, the waifu asks for many things from the protagonist, such as buying ice cream, bringing her books, and other things. There, Mizuto realizes that she had been using him all that time because she didn't have a fever, but despite that, the guy doesn't get upset. And who would get upset if he had been touching those assets for several hours? Yum asks the protagonist not to leave her alone because even though she doesn't have a fever, she wants the guy to stay by her side, where he gives her an epic response, as he can no longer leave her side because they are now siblings. Yes, siblings, you can hardly believe it, my friend. Chapter 3. The next morning, things get very strange because we see Yum with the protagonist's underwear, and the waifu's perverted mode comes to light. It turns out that when she was dating the protagonist, she had a habit of storing everything he gave her in a little box, including an empty soda can. She had been hiding this perverted side all this time, but as she still has feelings for the protagonist, her hormones get stirred up sometimes. Yum decides to wait until everyone is sleeping to carefully go to Mizuto's room and leave her underwear there, but it just so happened that the protagonist was coming out of her room with one of her bras. It turns out that they both took each other's clothing while showering because they saw they had left an item in the dryer, and out of curiosity, they took it, and just then, the parents arrived, and they had to hide it. A difficult to believe story. There, Yum takes the opportunity to tell him what she used to do a while back, keeping the things he gave her. She thought the guy would get mad and see her in a weird way, but it was quite the opposite. Mizuto ended up blushing and liking that perverted part of his waifu. They both agree that they broke the rules and have the freedom to ask each other to do anything as long as it's outside the house and not something too strange. Everything stays there, but while leaving school, Yum sees the protagonist with a girl wearing glasses, practically a copy of her. Jealousy quickly invades her. So she starts investigating by asking Minami if she knows a girl with glasses and black hair, a girl who would be hard to find since there are many women in the school who match that description. The thing is that Yum goes home deep in thought and, upon arrival, notices a woman in the house. To gather evidence that the protagonist is up to something sneaky, she takes photos of the girl's shoes and quickly calls him to ask him to run an errand for her, with the intention of making the guy leave and leave a total stranger alone in his house. Things that only happen in Japan or in anime. Yum takes advantage of the situation to go see the supposed girl and encounters the protagonist in his room. The strange thing is that she heard the doorbell and the shoes were gone, and Mizuto tells her that there was no girl in there, although he eventually tells her that there was one and that he was a bit tired, making Yum imagine naughty things. The detail is that the girl who was with the protagonist is Minami, who is obsessed with Yum and wants to marry the protagonist just to spend more time with her sister. Basically, the waifu is crazy. Since the protagonist doesn't know what to do to get rid of her, he calls the ladies' man of the class, who tells him that Minami is a crazy cat who had a boyfriend a while ago, and everything was going well. They were both happy, and the waifu was with him every second of the day until 3 months later when the guy ended up in the hospital due to extreme stress because Minami never wanted to leave him alone. Basically, she even accompanied him to the bathroom. The plan is to make Minami completely forget about Yum, so the protagonist suddenly decides to invite Yum on a date, as that would be her punishment for breaking the rules. Chapter 4. While waiting for the protagonist at the meeting point, Yum begins to think that it's normal for two siblings to go out on a weekend, but when she sees how handsome the protagonist arrives, she gets excited. He's dressed just like the kind of guys she likes. While waiting in line to enter the aquarium, she tries to act serious, but inside, she's about to have a heart attack because she really wants to kiss the protagonist. Once they have their tickets, the protagonist takes her hand, and they enter the aquarium together. Unbeknownst to them, Minami and Kogure are following them incognito. The plan is to make Minami believe that they get along really well and love each other, even though their interactions make them look like a couple. The goal is to make Minami drop her obsession with Yum. So, the protagonist acts like a gallant gentleman, complimenting Yum's beauty and protecting her from being pushed around. As the date continues and the protagonist keeps making Yum nervous, there's a brief moment when they separate to go to the bathroom. Yum, being a bit lost and not able to read maps, ends up lost in the aquarium in an outdoor area. The protagonist calls her, and she expects him to tease her, but it's quite the opposite. He treats her kindly and says he'll come to find her because he knows she's very absent-minded. Yum remembers that when they were dating, she got lost at a fireworks festival, which was their first date that she thought she was ruining. But the protagonist found her by giving her a drink, which, by coincidence, happens to be the same can she has been keeping. And, by some twist of fate, he brings her the same drink again. This time, the guy starts teasing her and they engage in an intellectual battle about books, discussing analyses and things they both understand, showing Minami that they are having a wonderful day. Once the date is over, Yum says goodbye and heads home, while the protagonist stays to meet with Minami. Minami tells him that she doesn't want to come between them because she sees how close they are. Also, if Yum finds out how obsessed she is with her, she will distance herself, and they won't interact anymore. But the protagonist reassures her, saying that he will keep her secret as long as she doesn't go crazy trying to spend 24/7 with Yum. However, Minami doesn't promise to keep this, as her goal remains the same, to marry the protagonist and spend as much time with Yum as possible. When they return home, Yum thinks that the protagonist didn't invite her out because he wanted to but because there was another reason for him to do it. The mystery of the shoes still seems suspicious to her. But when the protagonist arrives, she asks him to pose for several photos like an intellectual ladies' man, which drives her crazy because it's one of her strange fetishes. Between you and me, she wants some action. Chapter 5. Out of nowhere, we have a flashback to the past when Yum and Mizuto were just beginning to fall in love. They were at a camp, where the two lovebirds decided to watch the beautiful moon. The protagonist took the opportunity to give her indirect compliments that aroused Yum's hormones. Returning to the present, Yum reminds him that it's Mother's Day, and they should go buy something for their mom on her day off. The protagonist agrees but says he won't go with her on his day off. Yum changes her clothes, knowing what the protagonist likes, and becomes quite flirtatious, making the guy start drooling. By doing this, she breaks one of the rules they have, and the waifu has the right to ask for anything. So, we see them all cuddled up in the subway, heading to buy a gift for their mom. While at the mall, they discuss what to buy, but in the end, they opt for the old reliable, a beautiful bouquet of roses. Their mother thanks them for being such good children and runs off crying to tell her husband what happened. There, we see Mizuto going somewhat depressed to a distant room, where there is an altar. It turns out that their mother died when he was a child, and he doesn't remember her. He only recalls her face from the photo they have. Yum comforts him as a supportive sister. The protagonist thinks that his parents, being married, have never had a honeymoon or a moment alone, getting intimate at night. So, he proposes to Yum that they should leave home to give their parents some alone time and stay in a motel. But as expected, the girl is afraid of success and rejects his offer. Well, at least he tried. In the end, they communicate with Minami and Kogure, who allow them to stay in their house. Obviously, Yum stays with Minami, and the protagonist stays with the handsome Kogure. It turns out that these two friends have been neighbors since childhood, but they have always maintained a friendship with arguments, just like the protagonist and Yum. While the protagonist is with Kogure, the guy starts shouting nonsense so that the girls can hear, saying that the protagonist wants Yum's melons all to himself. Well, that's a lie. There, the protagonist gets his revenge and reveals Kogure's diary, where he writes that he will marry Minami when he grows up. But this group of mismatched couples goes out to eat, where the arguments continue, as usual. At the end of the night, after they all fall asleep, the protagonist goes out to the balcony to see the beautiful moon. Coincidentally, Yum does the same, reminiscing about that time they had a beautiful view. She tells him that it was probably when she fell in love with him. Affirmative, soldier, she still loves him. Chapter 6. It's exam time, and since Yum is the top student, she wants to maintain her position. She believes that if she fails, her reputation will drop, and her friends will abandon her. However, her greatest rival is the protagonist, who has always outperformed her in their studies. But when she finally beat him, he didn't seem to care, and being second best was fine with him. Yum tells him not to cry when she beats him again. This declaration sparks a rivalry between them. In the Japanese language exams, the waifu scores exceptionally well, but when she sneaks into Mizuto's room to check his score, she finds that he did terribly and didn't even finish the test. This makes her think that the protagonist is letting her win, so she lashes out, but their mother intervenes. Mizuto explains that she wants to be the best, and it's fine if he lets her win. This makes Yum feel that he's not taking her seriously. However, when the exam week is over, the results show that Yum is in second place. The protagonist made an incredible comeback, making her realize that no matter what place she's in, her friendships are real, and her friends will congratulate her even for being in second place. Ecstatic, Yoon rushes to the library to thank the protagonist for making her understand this. But when she gets there, she finds him with another girl, Isana. She has the same taste in reading as the protagonist and understands his way of thinking. She's very open and seems quite flirty with him, though she's shy when he tries to introduce her to Minami and Yoon. Yoon gets jealous seeing the protagonist being flirty with another girl. So, in an attempt to forget the past or for whatever reason, she decides to be a better sister to the protagonist. She makes sure he eats well, is more friendly, and stops bothering him. Mizuto notices something is off and asks Isana about it. She advises him and helps him look sharp. He goes to Yoon's room and flirts with her, which makes her weaken. Once he has her, she confesses that she was jealous of the other girl. The protagonist tells her to calm down, as there's nothing between them, and it's both strange and normal for a sister to be jealous at this level because he has known her so well for 2 years. So, the protagonist introduces Isana to them, and she reveals that she's not in love with him. She also prefers having a boy's body because she hates dealing with, well, you know, that time of the month. Although when she says goodbye, there's something that makes us think that this green-eyed monster really wants something more with our protagonist. Chapter 7. It turns out that our instincts were right. Isana receives a letter in her locker when she arrives at school. It's a kind of threat telling her that someone knows her secret. The letter is actually a prank and an invitation from Yoon and Minami to meet at a cafe. There, the girls confront Isana and tell her that she's in love with the protagonist and wants to see his goose. Isana, who has never felt love for anyone and has never had a boyfriend, is not sure if she really likes him. Minami shows her photos and videos of the protagonist that make Isana blush with a flirty look that's hard to miss. However, Yoon doesn't know what to do to make the protagonist her boyfriend, as she doesn't want to risk their friendship by trying to seduce him. The girls promise Isana that they'll help her, which seems strange to Yoon since she feels she shouldn't be helping but, at the same time, wants to forget the past with the protagonist. Their first attempt fails. Isana tries to get close to the protagonist, hoping he'd notice her assets, but he doesn't pay her any attention and even tells her to cover up because she's showing too much. But he says it so calmly, as if he didn't care. Worried, the girls decide it's time to use Isana's secret weapons. Yoon, with her ample assets, gives the protagonist a massage, but things go from sensual to very, very strange out of the blue. But who would complain about a massage from melons? The last attempt is for Isana to look fabulous with makeup, but once again, she fails. Yoon tells her it's best to be herself and continue as they have been because the right moment to confess her feelings will come. However, Minami, who's a bit crazy, wants everything to happen super fast. In the afternoon of the next day, Isana, full of courage, invites the protagonist to meet behind the school. The girls hide to listen to everything. Yoon tells him that he's the only one who hasn't seen her as a weird girl and has treated her very well. Essentially, he's her first friend and also her first love. But the protagonist feels so flattered by all she says that he unfortunately rejects her, as there is someone else in his heart who may not deserve that place, but he can't love someone else if he still has feelings for that person. Obviously, Yoon, upon hearing this, starts crying because she understands that Mizuto still loves her. The problem is that now they're step-siblings, and well, step-siblings are not alone with their parents. Don't judge, you do the same, you pervs. Capitulo 8. Even though the waifu was rejected by the protagonist, she continues to be a very good friend to him, and when I say good, I mean really good. She flirts with him a lot and gives him massages with her ample assets, which, let's face it, we all want a friend like that. Yoon asks the protagonist if she can visit his book collection, as she thinks he might have some interesting books they can read together. After some spicy teasing to raise anyone's interest, the protagonist agrees to take her to his place with the condition that she must behave. Yoon and Minami learn that Isana is going to the protagonist's house and decide to give her a radical makeover. They take her to a clothing store, and with her fantastic figure, every outfit she tries on makes her look very appealing. This situation makes Minami jealous because Isana's attributes are huge. Minami comes up with the idea that Yoon should change her look, and Isana should wear baggier clothes while Yoon wears tighter clothes. Yoon has a flashback of her first date with the protagonist when she wore a miniskirt and looked very pretty, but he asked her not to wear miniskirts in public. This memory is why she always covers herself so much. After choosing the clothes and Isana asking the protagonist if he likes the new outfit, they buy the clothes, and the waifu rushes to the protagonist's house. There, she's amazed by the huge library he has. Yum is also present, as she's worried the protagonist might try something. Isana takes off her socks and lies down on the protagonist's bed, which raises Yum's concern. Yum decides to have a private conversation with Isana, who tells her that it's clear that she likes the protagonist, but more as a friend. She doesn't want the protagonist to distance himself from her because what would really hurt her is if he made new friends and started neglecting her. Yum realizes that the friendship they have is special, but she still feels jealous, so she asks the protagonist to put Isana's socks on, and it's clear that Mizuto blushes as he does it. The tension between them keeps growing. As the evening turns into night, Isana has to leave the protagonist's house. The protagonist reflects on the fact that if he had never been in a relationship with Yum, he might have accepted Isana's confession when she asked him out. Capítulo 9. In a change of scene, we travel back to the past to see how this couple was in the early days of their relationship. They shared their first kiss soon after starting to date, but a few months into their relationship, the protagonist invited her to his house when they'd be home alone, ostensibly to show her his book collection. However, Yum had other intentions, but he didn't show any interest and didn't make a move, despite spending hours alone together in his room. So, when he drove her back home, Yum felt depressed, thinking she wasn't attractive enough for him. But on the other side, the protagonist was also eager to make a move but lacked the courage to initiate it. The relationship was going great until they were placed in separate classes, and Yum started making friends. While this might seem like a positive development since she was initially quite antisocial, she started giving more attention to her friends than her boyfriend and first friend. She often talked about her female friends whenever she was with him, which made Mizuto explode and tell her he didn't care about her friends. Yum thought that he was only jealous that her friends might take her away from him. But while she was waiting for him in the library, a girl came and asked him for advice about books. When Yum arrived, she thought he was being unfaithful, leading to a heated argument. The protagonist even apologized for treating her badly. It was all a misunderstanding, but it caused a rift between them. More than a year went by without them speaking, and it was on the day of their graduation that Mizuto decided to break up with her. Yum went crazy because she saw him with another girl, and he was completely oblivious to her presence. However, their lives took a dramatic turn, and in the present day, we see them arguing as usual. It's during this argument that they reveal a big secret. This book here was the supposed excuse to be alone in the house when they were a couple. Yum tells him that she wanted to be more intimate with him, but he was more hesitant than an old car engine that wouldn't start. She reveals that he didn't make a move even though she wanted it. Essentially, they both have a strong desire for each other, and they could have had some late-night entertainment at any time. Chapter 10. Well, on a rainy night while Yum was peacefully reading, a cockroach appeared in her room. Frightened, she turned to our protagonist, who also had some disgust for insects and decided to combat this little critter with full-on insecticide. Since Yum wasn't satisfied not knowing if the creature had died or not, she decided to sleep with the protagonist in his room, both sharing the bed like the lovebirds they are. Additionally, that night their parents were out working and couldn't return due to the rain. But after sleeping, the next morning the waifu began teasing him for being a scaredy cat. The mother jokingly remarked that they looked like an adorable couple, and the father mentioned that they would soon go to a house they had in the countryside, where their only entertainment would be the river. So, he asked Mizuto to accompany his sister to buy a bikini for the occasion. They both go, and once Yum picks her swimsuit, she treats us to a tremendous visual delight with her outfit. Pay attention to those curves. The protagonist, like any man, tries to hide his emotions but gives a slight compliment to make her feel good and ultimately chooses that swimsuit. After leaving the store, they pass by the place where they shared their first kiss. A strange wind blows, causing Yum's hat to fly off, and they have a beautiful moment that almost ends with a passionate kiss, but in the end, nothing happens. So, in the evening, Isana visits the protagonist, as is her usual routine, to watch a movie. The waifu ends up lying down on the protagonist's lap, asking him to comfort her. She even starts touching her attributes because she's feeling hot. Some people have all the luck. Yum witnesses the entire act and gets upset by how forward Isana is. The protagonist suddenly becomes tired and wants to sleep. Isana offers her thighs as a pillow with a view of her lovely mountains, but the protagonist ends up preferring Yum's thighs. Isana, in a playful mood, wants to kiss him, but Yum forbids it, claiming that a kiss should be special and blah blah blah. In the end, the waifu leaves the house, and the mother takes the opportunity to ask what's going on between the protagonist and Isana. Yum tells her that she doesn't believe they'll end up as a couple and that they're just very close friends. The mother mentions that now that she's grown up, she should look for a good match. However, Yum doesn't pay attention and, while in her room, says aloud that the only person she sees in her future is Mizuto. Chapter 11. They arrive at the protagonist's grandmother's house, where Yum meets the whole family to which the protagonist belongs. There, we see a busty woman hugging the protagonist without warning. She's Madoka, the protagonist's cousin, who we could now say is also Yum's cousin. This buxom lady is very friendly with Mizuto, but during the barbecue, we see that while the whole family is having a good time, Mizuto is alone. What's strange is that no one does anything to include him. This catches Yum's attention, and Madoka takes the opportunity to ask about the beautiful bikini Yum is wearing, noticing that she looks at the protagonist a lot. This makes her think that they had something more than a sibling relationship before becoming siblings. Then, Mizuto gets up, leaves his empty plate, and says goodbye to his father, surprising Yum that his father didn't say anything and, on the contrary, thanks him for being there to eat. While everyone is enjoying alcoholic beverages, Madoka asks Yum to find the protagonist in the great-grandfather's library and tell him he can go take a shower. When Yum arrives at the library, she feels a great silence, and the place makes her feel detached from the world. The protagonist was reading a book, more like a diary, written by his great-grandfather who had been in the war many years ago. The book was hidden, and he found it when he was a child, possibly being the only one who ever read it. As he goes to shower, he gives the book to Yum to read, and she starts crying due to the sad love story of his grandfather. She quickly realizes that the protagonist has been alone all his life because he felt disconnected from society and didn't understand love or affection. He couldn't reciprocate it, and he considered all the wonderful, colorful things in life to be something that only happened on television. However, reading his great-grandfather's diary helped him understand the world and life, but he still carries a deep pain because the one person he could trust broke his heart, and despite being the one to end it, he hasn't been able to heal his broken heart. Yum also realizes that Madoka was the protagonist's first love, but Madoka knows that Yum wants to talk to the protagonist but doesn't know how. So, she arranges for them to be alone in a room. There, the waifu starts crying, regretting having made him suffer. The protagonist, upon seeing her cry, hugs her and confesses that his first love was a very cheerful girl, who is none other than Yum herself. With this, she realizes that she was wrong to think he was cheating on her. Final chapter. The moment for the summer fireworks arrives. They dress nicely and go to do the usual things at events, eat, play, and enjoy each other's company. While they're having a great time there, just minutes before the fireworks start, the protagonist disappears. Yum knows he left because he doesn't know how to relate to his family, as he lost his mother and didn't understand why everyone was affectionate toward him. He didn't know what love or affection was, and he couldn't reciprocate it. As a result, his past appeared in black and white because he thought all those wonderful, colorful things only happened on television. But when he met Yum, he felt nothing for her at first. However, shortly afterward, when she was lost and he rescued her from her loneliness, something clicked inside him. This made him capable of caring deeply for someone he could never forget. The waifu finds him in a remote shrine, and they talk about their past and how much they loved each other. The protagonist tells her that if he had met Isana first, he wouldn't have been with her, something that was quite obvious. Then, the fireworks start, and for the first time, they finally get to watch them together. Yum sees him crying and grants him his second kiss in life. Damn, what a great story, I think I'm going to cry. After that, they return to their home, and their lives must go on, but with the understanding that they've turned the page to begin a new story together as the siblings they are. But will they remain siblings, or maybe they'll take it to the next level? If you want more epic anime, comment with the words romance and comedy. And with that, I'll find you some other similar anime that might interest you.